thing was wiped
Wow.
and I had to learn to walk again. And yet it
Wow.
was the most beautiful, transformational moment of my life. And I wouldn't
Wow.
take it back. All the pain and people who've had these experiences, and I've interviewed a few of them, and they have great physical suffering even today, wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take back the
Intuitive Leadership Mastery, the podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders like you who want to double profits and half stress by improving your business intuition. Learn how with your host, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. We're here today with Tricia Barker, and we're going to talk about how she died and came back and the experience she's had and how this totally changed her life and her business path and what you could learn from her about your intuition and how to better run your business. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk to your audience.
Yes, it's great to have you on the show. Tricia is the author of a book, which is all about her experience meeting angels in the OR or operating room when she did die for a few minutes. I think 2.5 minutes, she was gone. She's also appeared in a lot of newspapers and magazines. She's been on the Dr. Oz show and has lots of videos on her YouTube channel, which we'll put in the show notes. So very interesting person. And she is a spiritual healer, teacher. She does mediumship. She's also a regular teacher at a college in Texas. So lots of things. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you so much.
So I think we better start with what is it? You had a near-death experience, or NDE. What exactly does that mean? Because not everyone listening may not know that.
Yeah, so a lot of skateboarders often say, oh, I nearly hit a wall. I had a near-death experience. And I'm like, no, you did not. You were not in the hospital for 10 days. Your heart did not stop. You did not bleed out. So yes, I technically was dead for 2.5 minutes during emergency spinal surgery. I had a major car accident when I was a senior in college. And, I was very driven materially. I wanted to be a lawyer. I grew up poor. So that was my path. And I was on my way to run this Austin 10K when I had a head-on collision. And during that surgery, I lifted up out of my body and I had a full, profound near-death experience. And it altered everything about my consciousness. And I don't know if you want me to jump in and tell that story or if you have some questions around that.
Well, we will go into what your experience was and more later in the episode. But I guess the first question I have related to that is, how did you know this was real and you weren't just having wacky dreams on the anesthesia?
That's a great question. And a lot of people ask me that because some people are vivid dreamers and some people do contact their ancestors at night during their dreams. And they do have very profound psychic dreams. So how do you know what's real? I tell you from my experience that I felt it was more real than anything I'd ever experienced. So in college, I tried mushrooms and hallucinogens, and I understood the difference between a dream and this near-death experience. And this near-death experience felt like a portal had been opened. Like suddenly my brain was not my brain. It was connected to a consciousness greater than my own. So the way I was perceiving things outside of my body was just astronomically different. And there were these angels or light beings, whatever you want to call them, in the room. And they had this ability to heal through their light, through the light they sent from their eyes, through the surgeons into my body. So I saw everything working at one time. And I understood like, oh, this is kind of theater in a way. We put on these bodysuits, and we journey here, and there's something much larger at play going on. So that's how I knew it was real from the moment. And I was agnostic. So I have to tell you that I was excited the first few moments outside of my body. I was like, oh, we go on. I want to jump back into my body and tell all my agnostic friends, like, you're wrong. We go on.
Now, I just want to come back to that. That's all a great subjective experience you had, and I totally believe you. And also, from having read your book, I think there were some objective things when you were out of your body, looking back down on your physical body and the operating room, and then even outside of the operating room as you traveled around. Didn't you see some things that you couldn't have known?
Yes. So researchers like IANDS and various groups, and IANDS is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, they love anything that's a verifiable detail or veridical perception. So sometimes people who are in surgery remember a lot about their particular surgery. I happened to leave that operating room. I saw how bloody my body was, and that was verified later, that internal injuries caused me to bleed to death. And so that was the cause of death. And so, that was one verifiable detail later that I understood. But the main one was I saw my stepdad in the corridor, and he was such a health nut. Like, he was one of those people who criticized you if you had a Coke or a Diet Coke. How could you dare drink that? You must drink things that are pure and healthy. And he was eating a Snickers bar, and he was getting candy out of the vending machine. And later I asked my mom about it after recovery, and she said that at that moment, her and my dad were on their knees praying, certain I had died. And he came in with the Snickers bar and said, "Hey, lighten up. You guys need some food? Are you about to pass out or something?" He is kind of a funny guy. And so she was amazed, that I saw that Snickers bar. And then I was amazed more from that perspective that my parents were psychically tied to me. They understood that I was literally out of my body at that moment. So, but researchers love it because it's verified.
That is great. Yeah. I mean, that helps us understand this really happened. And, it wasn't just some vivid dream you had. And the same thing's true for past life stuff. I don't know if you've met people who've had verifiable past life, but the same thing, researchers in that field often want to know details that you can't look up on the internet or online. I remember reading a book about someone who was, I think, Babe Ruth, a famous baseball player, and he knew details of this guy's life that only the baseball player's family knew. But he was very clear what his previous life was about. So, yeah,
University of Virginia does a great job of studying past lives and near-death experiences. And so, yeah, there's lots of stories about children who've remembered unusual things and even reconnected with some people from their lives. So it's very cool.
Yeah. So that's all this is evidence that we do have a soul, that we do have an afterlife or an in-between life or a before life. And we're not just like, a collection of chemicals following physical laws like little robots, which is, I'm exaggerating slightly, but that's the rationalist view of humanity, right?
Yeah.
And really, we are spiritual I think we're spiritual beings having a human experience with these bodies, or what did you call them earlier? A wetsuit or something?
Space suits, yeah.
A spacesuit, yes. So it's not that we're human beings that occasionally have spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think it's a profound shift on how we work in our businesses and our lives.
And it amazed me that these angelic beings were working through these profoundly intelligent neurosurgeons and communicating with me at the same time. Like, they were assisting in the surgery. The neurosurgeons were not aware of it, but, there is this outside help that is available to us. And I think when we call on it, we do see our life shift. And that's what, that's part of what I learned later, is that connecting with that realm does indeed, add more light, add more beauty, add more connection to this experience.
So that's something everyone listening can do in their business and their life. They can call on their spirit guides, whether it's angels or ancestors, or maybe it's totem animals or whatever it is, and help them in a particular way. I mean, I'm in a kind of mastermind group that way we have 2-week sprints, and we pick an animal or a plant, or currently we've got Greek gods and goddesses, but we look at what particular abilities does this animal have. And right now, this current sprint is for the god Apollo, who was apparently an archer and was really good at aiming and had various other qualities. So how can I use that in this problem I have today and ask them to come in to help on that? So it's just an invitation for everyone listening to, maybe you've got some task to do today that's maybe challenging. Perhaps you can follow Tricia's lead and have your angels come in and just help with that and ask them specifically, could you please help me write this paper or whatever the thing is?
Yeah. And, it's their energy. Sometimes we feel a little drained and frustrated by this world. And the minute you tune in, meditate, and ask to be connected to that unconditional love from your angels, from Creator, then things do begin to shift. And a lot of times we can't, with our logical mind, see the right answer. But the answer is usually simple. It's usually one of great healing, and it's usually one of great love. And I honestly do believe that our ancestors are over there cheering us on, even if they weren't our biggest supporters in life. Like once they're over there, they kind of see the bigger picture, and they really are our cheerleaders. They see that what we've signed up for is difficult in many ways, but it's a beautiful experience, and it's worth giving our all to.
I think, when we say we're wearing a spacesuit or a bodysuit or a meat suit or whatever the phrase is, the thing is, human beings often have trauma and they're wounded in childhood and they may not behave in the nicest way. I know my mother had some trauma and she had a tendency to, she could snap or be mean or worry a lot. But as a spirit, she died 5 years ago, and I connected her on a spiritual level. She's just this loving spirit, and that was inside all the time when she was a human being. But the light kind of gets covered up by these traumas. And so it doesn't always come out, as that loving presence all the time.
Right. And, we are just that pure love. And that's what I saw, one of the first messages that I heard from Creator is love is all that we take with us. So all of that trauma and all the things created from that trauma is kind of what we leave behind, the fear, the pain. And in that realm, we take the love that we give. And this is often misunderstood because people often email me and say, but I'm not loved. And it's like, no, it's you loving your dog. It's you loving the world. It's you, choosing love for yourself, love for this day. I wake up, I feel creative. I feel, like love coursing through my veins. How can I be kind to people around me? That's the love that you take with you. So if you infuse every moment of your day as much as possible, with love, you're taking that day with you in a sense that you never lose by loving.
And I totally agree with you there. And I think what I and a lot of people do, we search for that experience of pure love or joy or connection outside, by achieving goals in our business or acquiring more things or toys or getting the perfect relationship or whatever that thing, or the great haircut or whatever. And yeah, those things can bring a feeling of love and joy, but really the key is always inside.
Yes. And have you noticed that a lot of times big breakthroughs or, a great love or something happens when you totally give up on it? We've heard it so many times. So, when people say, I totally gave up on this business, I totally gave up on ever finding a partner. And the minute they do, that's when it lands in their lap, because that energy of just being you with joy, just being totally you with a connection to that other side and moving forward with that joy, that is what brings that magic to you. And, the near-death experience taught me to give up everything. I get my life, my body, my goals, my plans, like literally everything was wiped and I had to learn to walk again. And yet it was the most beautiful, transformational moment of my life. And I wouldn't take it back, all the pain and people who've had these experiences. And I've interviewed a few of them, and they have great physical suffering even today, wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take back the plane crash. They wouldn't take back any of it, because without that insight, they wouldn't be who they are, which is generally, I'm not saying all the time, I'm not saying that you don't suffer from depression after your death experience. You do. A lot of times, but there is this giving up on what you thought life was and embracing, a different way of being.
What do you think life is then?
I think in our culture, and I'm talking about the American culture and who I was in the 90s when I was in college, I bought into, I would heal all my childhood wounds if I made enough money, if I was smart enough, if I was successful enough, if my relationship looked good to the world, if there was this facade, I was pretty superficial, to be honest. And as I embraced all that, though, I felt emptier and emptier at times. Like I didn't understand it, but that was the feeling. And when I had that near-death experience, that was completely wiped. I was given a different mission. And that mission was not necessarily one that would be lucrative. I was literally told to go back and teach in schools for a certain amount of time. And since I had grown up with abuse in my past, I was certain that this was what Creator wanted from me. And so I spread a lot of healing in real world ways, through public schools, because there's a lot of issues, in public schools and community colleges.
Yes. There's a lot of children who have trauma and bad experiences. Maybe you saw a bit of your own childhood in some of their experiences, or you had compassion for what they were. And how did you know what to say when you were with someone? Maybe you had an adolescent who was not interested in studying English, and
lots of
that
them
must have happened.
Lots and lots of them. But what I found is that so few people are seen, are truly valued, and so few people are told, hey, this is really beautiful about you, or wow, you really have this talent, or hey, look at yourself and let's see what you want to do in your future. Like, most people are told what not to do, how to behave. This is what you need to do. All of society is not opening them up to their own creative power. So no matter how dire the situation was, I always asked students, I was like, okay, so it's really bad. So, most of your siblings are in gangs, crime is your family's way of living. Is there anything you like doing outside of this? And this one kid was like, I love fixing cars. And I said, let's imagine, just how fantastic this could be. What if you started remaking old cars into fantastic new cars and selling them? What if this was your business? Hey, what if you had a TV show and did this? What if, let's dream as far as you can, down this road. And how good would you feel to be on the right side of the law and to not worry about going to prison and, not worry about these things? And it was fun to just watch people's minds change. So sometimes I just worked on their minds. Sometimes, there was so much trauma. It was stepping in with CPS and really just working with those kids and talking directly to them. And I trusted that, hey, this was my mission from the other side, then something is going to work through me. Kind of the way those angels work through those neurosurgeons. Maybe something is going to give me the right thing to say. And, believe it or not, sometimes I feel that energy come through. And, some people might call it channeling, they might call it something else, but it's like giving up yourself to this higher intelligence. And there have been times that I don't even know what I'm saying in the classroom, because now I lecture at a community college, and I'll have students come up crying after a lecture and say, hey, I've decided to join the Peace Corps, or, hey, I've changed directions in this way. And so I really believe that the light can work through us, and probably in more times than we realize, when we're just paying attention and we're kind and we're focused on other people. And actually, that's the key to a great business or getting rid of depression, is like less self-focus and more focus on the world out there.
I think that definitely is a good thing to do to help get into that space of love. And also it helps just set that intention. I want to connect to my angels, or to my guides, or to God, to the light. And I find if I do that before a business meeting, the meeting usually goes a lot better. So,
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just the simple thing of setting an intention for your day, setting an intention for your meetings, setting an intention for everything that you experience.
Yeah, it makes a lot of difference. So coming back to your intuition, how was your intuition before you had this car accident and left your body and came back?
You're listening to the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. And now, back to today's show.
I was a sensitive child. I'm not going to say that I wasn't. And I was raised in, evangelical home. So at about 7th grade, I really just kind of saw through, for lack of a better way of putting it, that particular religion and turned against it and called myself agnostic, even at that age, until my near-death experience. So I saw that, I didn't like the judgment that I felt in churches. I didn't like the politics. There were so many things I didn't like, that I just thought, okay, I need a better science education. I need, a different way of being. So intuition was not a part of my life at all. Even though I would have deep emotional feelings around things. So, before my near-death experience, I felt as if my first boyfriend was cheating on me, and he was, but I didn't call that intuition. I just called that, an emotional connection to another human being and realizing that something was off. And it took actually going to see a psychologist who turned to me and she was like, "That's your intuition, Tricia. Duh, he's cheating on you." And the minute I went and I told him, I was like, "Look, I know you're cheating on me. It's time to break up." He started crying, and that was the end of it. But that's the extent of my intuition before the near-death experience. After the near-death experience, like when I came out of that surgery, I hardly was contained in my body. I felt like my energy expanded into the room. I felt depersonalized. So when the nurses asked me, "What is your name?" I said, "Her name is Tricia." And I didn't really want to be back in this broken body. It was very easy for me to jump into the consciousness of the nurses, different people around me, to read people. I was never able to read people like that before, or just even pay attention to them. I think I was so self-focused and insecure and, focused on myself. And the minute I came out of surgery, I was amazed. I saw my family differently. I was like, wow, they're really modest. They run to the bathroom to change and they're concerned about the physical world. Why does no one want to talk about where I've been? I just met God. Come on, people, wake up. Yes. And they would make jokes like, "Wow, she's on good drugs." And I was like, "It's not drugs. I promise you, I've been somewhere. I want to talk about this." And so eventually I just started writing it all down. Nurses would try to understand a little bit of what I was talking about. My surgeon, she actually stepped back and I could read her well enough. And I could tell that she was looking at me like, "Don't make me write a prescription for mental health issues." She was like, "Please, your surgery's been successful. You've had many blood transfusions. You're going to walk. This is just excellent news. Let's focus on your recovery." And she kept bringing me back, to the good job that she had done on my back. And I kept wanting to say, "Hey, but angels were working through you," and that just that didn't go over so well. There were only a few friends of mine who came later who were spiritual and they actually listened to the story. But most people who were religious.
Well, it is life, to understand there is really a God. There are really angels around everyone helping them. That's a kind of world-shattering viewpoint change for many Americans.
Yeah.
Even if they go to church, they may not really believe it.
Well, and I think they want it to be exactly biblical, but the experience is different for each person because, of course, God meets us where we need to be met, for our soul journey, what we need to learn. And so, I had a point, and since you read my book, with my mom, I was like, "Look, you're loved and I'm loved. You're wrong and I'm wrong. We're both wrong, but hey, we're both loved." And, in her mind, I could see her going, no, I'm right. And you're definitely wrong. And you should have gone to hell, not heaven. You did drugs, in college. You're promiscuous. You don't deserve heaven. I could see all these judgments and these thoughts, running through her head. And I was like, no, God is so loving. God forgives everything. That this was just this was a glimpse, but it was a reorientation of my whole being. And then a lot of people say, well, these are just, in the Christian religion, agnostics fight and say it's a dream. In the Christian religion, people say, oh, that was just Satan tricking you. And I was like, oh, it's neither. I know that I'm changed by the light. I know that I'm healed by this experience. I know that I'm a different person and a better person. So it must be good. It must be a gift and not a trick. And I think that at a soul level, we know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, some churches or mosques or whatever have a lot of fear-based messaging that goes on. And, there is this fear of spiritual experience. Not in all churches. There are some churches where they talk in voices and charm snakes and do all kinds of, and do hands-on healings. It depends on the group. But I think, unfortunately, to me, spirituality or religion is around love and that heart connection, but unfortunately a lot of churches have turned into a more ego-based mental type exercise, and it's hard to take in when someone has a genuine spiritual experience. It's hard for people to take it in, and then there's all the agnostics and atheists, and they have even more trouble with it. It seems.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think most people, when I tell the actual story, their eyes light up. They imagine what is death like? I mean, even agnostics, friends of mine, when they read my book, they said they spend an afternoon imagining what death is like. And that's part of the Buddhist tradition, is imagine your death, imagine how you want to leave your body. And so for those of us who have, we know it to be this joyous, light-filled, amazing, exhilarating experience. But for those who haven't, it's a really important part of the journey to just begin to imagine the energy outside of your body. Joe Dispenza has meditations that kind of help you do that, connecting with the space outside of you. And remembering that, out of body experiences, lucid dreaming, these types of experiences are profound. And they cause a lot of people who have terminal illnesses to not fear death. So, there's value in getting outside of the body in these types of experiences. Yes.
Well, and I say to people listening who haven't had a near-death experience, nearly everyone sleeps every night. I mean, I think there are a few humans who are incapable of sleeping, but most people do go to sleep, and then they often have dreams, whether you remember them or not. What the heck do you think happens every night when you go to sleep? I mean, you probably are at some point leaving your body and having other experiences. And then most people have had orgasms, and that's another kind of quasi out of body experience that most people have had. So it's not as unusual as we might. And then many people have taken various psychedelic substances, whether it's DMT or mushrooms, LSD or whatever.
And I can speak to that. I think the first couple of years after my near-death experience, I felt like I was on a 2-year mushroom trip. I mean, life was that dramatic. I felt so connected to nature. I felt like I had insights from trees, from birds, from, human beings. I just kind of felt like I was so deeply alive. And that, to me, was a verification that something really profound had happened, that there was something way beyond, just anesthesia and going under for surgery.
Yeah, no, clearly from reading your book, you're a different person afterwards. I'm not sure how much I'd have liked the previous Tricia.
Oh, you might have hired me as a lawyer, but you might not have liked me.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, who knows? She might have had changed as well if you'd gone in a different direction. But I don't know if you ever seen the movie I Am Sam with Sean Penn and Michelle Pfeiffer. It's an interesting, it's quite an old movie. It's from, 20 or 30 years ago. I forget the exact date. But the point was Michelle plays a high-powered attorney who has a new car and a fancy cell phone for the 90s. And, is having a marriage that's falling apart and her son doesn't communicate with her. And she learned her transformation in the movie is to access more of her heart side and her patience and love. And she has a transformation. But she does kind of have this archetype attorney kind of in her left brain, logical kind of thing running.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember that movie, and the heart of things is what transforms things. So yes, love generated from that heart and loving others, I think, is what begins to transform this world. Sometimes people worry about, the state of the world, or, is this new earth emerging? You hear this talk in the spiritual community, and how much destruction do we have to see, of old ways of being before a new way emerges. And I often think it doesn't matter. It's the love that we give to ourselves and others through all the changes that society goes through. So no matter what society you're in, no matter what city you're in, no matter what situation, begin with love for the self and ask Creator to give you more of that unconditional love. And that's where the transformation begins, because that was the most powerful part of my near-death experiences. I didn't have a very good childhood. There was a lot of emotional abuse, neglect, and in that presence of unconditional love, I felt all of it washing away. Like it was not me. It was just the situation. And I think that's the healing journey that we're all on, is leaving the past behind us and going, what do I want to generate? And what do I want to do from this moment in time, this present moment in time?
Yeah, they say that's the powerful fulcrum in time, that we can it's easier to make changes in the present moment. I personally, we can make changes in the past and in the future, but certainly for in this human experience, the present moment is when we can do 3D actions. So it is easier. And I love that idea of letting go of the past, all that sunk cost that we may have had. Yes, we invested in this thing and we've been whatever, but forget all that investment of time and money and emotion. What's best for me now? So I think that's where, I don't want to make this into an attorney episode, but a lot of business people who end up in lawsuits, they're forgetting that they could just let it all go. I mean, if they let the ego part go, is it really worth spending hundreds of hours of emotionally laden time suing someone else and all the attorney fees? Probably not, truth be told.
Exactly.
Probably better, even if they were an asshole and screwed you over, probably better just to let it go and forgive them, and then change how you behave in the future so you don't attract that kind of person, or you have boundaries to keep them out of the way.
Exactly. Not to say that justice doesn't need to occur in some situations, but I know of 3 families and 2 in particular, where a lot of money was involved in a divorce. And, one way is just horrifying. One parent is alienated, hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent, in courts. And another way worked out really great for both of them financially. They both lost out in some ways, but the kids are pretty balanced. You see these very and lawyers weren't involved other than, the final signing of, this person gets this person gets that, just putting it in legal writing. But at first it took a team, of mediators, therapists, light workers. And I think that's who we should be employing in those moments, is like help the psyche of the grief, help the family really transition differently into living separately, and not spend money wastefully that could go to kids and mortgages and, things that perhaps matter a little more.
Yeah, and I'd apply the same to any business dispute. If you're letting someone go who hasn't been performing well, how can it be done with grace and ease? And how can you help the people who are staying in the business and the person who's left to move forward?
Yes.
And also, how can you heal the business so you don't hire idiots like that again? Sorry, I didn't mean to say idiot. I mean, someone who wasn't an ideal fit.
Right. And then believe that person can grow and change from that moment too, and send that light, forward. I know I've heard, different. One rock star was really upset with this assistant he had hired and wanted to sue her, for, messing up some things. And I just remember thinking, no, you really need to calm down and just let her go find a different job that she can handle and be appreciative of your life and all that you have, and really, just let that one go.
Yeah, well, and I would add, it takes two people to hire someone who's not a good fit. It takes the applicant who accepted the job, and it takes the employer who offered the job. And probably the employer, i.e. me, has the most abilities and responsibility in that little exchange of power that went on there.
Right. And if it's a deep trigger, then a lot of times that's a moment to look inside yourself and go, wow, okay, is this coming up from something that I'm holding on to and I need to let go of, in order to move forward? And that even if it's a small thing, but I also believe in energy return as well. So there are moments when people take our energy and we allow them to take our energy. And after any exchange, one of the most important things you can do is just ask Creator to remove any energy that you're holding on from that person, send it back to them, wash clean in that unconditional love, and ask that all of your energy that they have taken be washed clean and returned back to you. And so that's kind of like universal court, let the light really figure out, how to give you the right return, the right energy, the right positivity moving forward away from those situations.
Now, I just want to come back to this New Earth thing you mentioned, because I interviewed someone else on the show earlier this month about what her view of the New Earth is. And I'll put the episode in the show notes. Her name is Nikki Cote. What is your view about what the New Earth is? Because a lot of spiritual people see that we're shifting to a New Earth, or whatever you call it. 5D or love, or what is New Earth to you? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I do a little more listening to what others say, but I do tune in. And what I see is that as we personally shift into more love and connection, our worlds and our immediate worlds start changing. And so this can have an effect around those who are around us. It can have an effect in our neighborhoods, but this interconnectedness is changing. There's a greater focus on nature, but we don't control others. Simply all we can do is hope for the best, is put out love and kind of hope that that spreads and then that follows. I don't claim to be someone who sees the future exactly. I see what's possible. I see the direction the energy is moving in, but it's up to every person to get on board in a way with putting the needs of nature at a higher place. Like one of the messages I heard in my near-death experience is remind them to go to nature. And as we continue down this path that we are continuing to go down, I think it is all the more vital that we remember, one, that we're a part of nature. Our bodies are a part of nature. As inflammation and autoimmune disorders are on the rise, we're aware, that we have polluted nature and this is affecting our bodies. We're part of it. And so just remembering that deep truth is the first beginning of change, physically, for the health of individuals, but for the greater planet. So that's one part of it, and then the next part is remembering that love is all that we take with us. So this place sometimes seems kind of primitive, honestly, to a lot of people, because it just seems like, oh, really, we are forgetting, that love is all that we take with us. So every exchange is either an exchange in a more beautiful way or in a degraded way, something we won't take with us. So, the new earth, maybe we won't be around necessarily to see it, like in this generation for the next 20 years or so, next 50 years, next 100 years. I can't claim to have a date or a moment. I just know that there is a shift that I'm seeing in young people, more of a language for spirituality, more of a language for this. So I know there is a cumulative mass of people who are beginning to understand, oh, hey, we are all energetically connected and this is not a bad thing. So let's make choices that make all of our experiences more light-filled and less painful.
I think that's great advice. I mean, I've certainly set a theme word of the year, which I've done before, and this year is divine love, or just love. And that I've shared that with my staff, with my clients. I've started sharing it on social media, and I try and phrase it in ways that people could hear, maybe rephrase it as kindness. I run a software company, and so I like, how could you be kind to your code and your customers, your co-workers? And here are some practical ideas. So I think that is true. I also personally believe there's more than one reality running at once. So the reality I have is not the same as other people's realities. And it's possible for part of the human race to have shifted to the new earth and other parts have not. So I don't think it's an all or nothing kind of thing. And I also think when people incarnate, they sign up to have certain experiences and certain spiritual lessons. And not everyone has signed up to go to the new earth, in my view. I don't know how to put it into words, but sometimes I just see visuals that I see pockets of great light and beauty, communities or individuals that seem to be vibrating in a different space amidst chaos. And so that, maybe they've shifted, like maybe there's that shift for some people. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the inspiring message here. Yes, we're going through a lot of shifts in our 3D reality. There's a lot of, there are wars here and there and plagues. And, I'm expecting the frogs to appear in a plague next to
locusts and spiders.
Yes. Yes. There you go. But the point is, we can be in a space of love and we can be kind and loving and conscious and listen to our customers and our staff. And we can act from a space of love in our businesses and in our family and home life. And that can make all the difference. And I'm reminded of, I'm trying to remember his name now. I think he wrote the book was it called Man's Search for Meaning? He was in a concentration camp in World War II.
Yes.
What was his name?
Viktor Frankel.
Viktor Frankel. So he had his physical reality for 2 or 3 years or however long he was there was not nice. I mean, if you think you're having a bad hair day at home listening to this, or your business is having a crisis du jour, just imagine you were forced at gunpoint to go and live in a concentration camp, and around you, people have terrible diseases and are dying or are being executed or whatever. And he managed to stay loving and positive is the point I'm trying to put here. So how about all of us listening while the world has another COVID or monkeypox or high inflation or our business is having issues? How about we just stay in that positivity and space of love and be as kind as we can to others as we go through this shift?
Yeah, because one single instant is what changed everything. I had it all. I was, in many ways, I was about to graduate, in 1994 from a great college. I was in peak physical health, about to run this race. And then 2 weeks later, I was in bed and learning to walk again. But I promise you, I was so much happier and so much more connected in that body cast and this, hair that I could barely wash because I was in this body cast, looked terrible wearing these big oversized
couldn't
t-shirts.
Scratch your back.
You couldn't scratch my back, could barely walk to the mailbox and eventually learned to walk again. But I was connected to everything and everyone. And I knew that from that point forward. And I also knew that I could ask for healing. So, whether it's your business, whether it's your body, whatever it is you're going through, meditation and taking some time to ask for healing in a space where you really allow your brain to relax, your body to relax, that's when you're receptive to healing. Because a lot of people ask, but they're not receptive. And I think in this technological age, we pick up our phones, we're so easily distracted. You have to take time to let things integrate, to let things align, to let things vibrate in a new way, and let that healing emerge in a different way.
I think those are great things. And it's so easy in modern American life, and particularly business life, to be just always on and feel you have to. And there's this almost pride point in entrepreneurs. I don't know if you've come across this. Oh, I worked 16 hours yesterday, or, I did and I don't hear so often people saying, well, I took the afternoon off. I had a siesta. I slept extra last night. And so I'm having a better business meeting today, or I'm having more creative ideas.
Yeah, I brag. I started a new thing of bragging about how much sleep I get. And I want my friends to do the same, like 8 hours, 8.5 hours, y'all. and I think we need to switch that, because creative people, I tell my creative writing students all the time, look, if you are working double shifts and taking care of kids and taking care of sick family members, you can't, you might be able to be creative. It might be on the back of a receipt in a grocery store line where you're writing down some cool ideas, but you're going to do much better if you sit in a hammock, if you daydream for a while, because daydreaming is co-creation with reality. What do you want to bring here? What would you like to see? So I'd say give yourself time to daydream, give yourself time to rest, give yourself time to meditate, and really switch that and watch the quality of your work change when you invite in help from the other side, and when you really take care of yourself. I think there's a lot of burnout and a lot of exhaustion. And I think there's 7 types of exhaustion. I won't list them all. You can Google it. There's a TED Talk, out there on this, but one of the ways is overstimulation. And nature is the best shift away from that. When you're overstimulated by all the things you have to do, your computer, your phone, your business, everything that's going on, grounding and just looking at a tree, looking at a night sky does shift you into a different reality.
Yeah, that's something we can all do. We can take a break from the computer, go for a walk around the block, look at nature. Hopefully there's a park or some tree or some flowers. I like to have flowers on my desk too. That's another reminder to me of connection with nature. And I just want to come back to that point you made about how, we're part of nature. I would almost take that further and say we are nature. I've started doing a meditation of gratitude to Mother Earth for, all the things. I realized, and I know rationally I knew this before, but everything in my life, my body, my hair, the hair color I put in my thing, my glasses, the computer in front of me, the building, all of it is made from stuff that came from Mother Earth. Yeah. And it's kind of mind-blowing that Mother Earth would be this generous. And even when people get up to things that are not quite so nice to Mother Earth, they all still come from effing Mother Earth. Yeah. Even the chemicals that are poisoning it are part of Mother Earth too. Yeah. It's quite mind-blowing. So it was for me.
It is. And that's part of that deeper connection to the all, that we are. A lot of people want to make a big difference, a huge, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves and their business and their personal lives and their soul mission. And I think what I'm hearing from angels right now, maybe for this podcast and for others, is it's okay if the red carpet is rolling out slowly. Just take some time to let it all integrate and make sure that your steps are in tune with what's best for you, what's best for others, and really just allow that generosity of Mother Earth, of the universe, to roll out for you at the right time, in the right way. And really, I think that allowing and that receiving and feeling worthy of it is a big thing for a lot of people. It's like they think that their worth is determined by it, but what they actually need to feel is just worthy of blessings, worthy of generosity from the earth, from the universe, from everything around them.
I'm probably going to make a total pig's ear of trying to misquote Marianne Williamson, but I'm sure she had this quote about who am I not to feel worthy? I'll try and dig up the quote and stick it in the show notes. But basically, we all spiritual beings. Of course, we're all worthy for all the wonderful spiritual gifts that life provides. Every human is worthy of their own version of their red carpet.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the new earth, to come back to that, is we can all win. It's not so much competition. I mean, even in spiritual communities, sometimes I feel like there's competition, whether it's numbers or, whatever it may be. But I'm always, like coming from this place, and that's the near-death experience oriented me differently. Like, if someone wins big, when one of my students got accepted to Oxford, I didn't get to go to Oxford. I mean, I won through her going to Oxford, I'm like, yes, I won, like that's a win for all of us, and I think we need to look at really celebrating each other and our small piece in other people's miraculous journey at times. Like, we can all win, it's not, one person's win is not detracting from our win.
Yeah, absolutely not. That's a abundance mindset, I would call it, or cooperation versus competition. And I have a friend who was very driven. He's working 16-hour days, and he feels he should be doing a zillion different things to improve himself, which is all very nice. But I talked to him. I'm in a group with him, and we were talking about, well, why don't you rest some more, like Tricia is saying. And he felt he had to do so much extra because, what it came down to, he's afraid of dying because he's an atheist, and he thinks when he dies, that's it, he's gone. And so he has to like pile on all the business things to do it. And for me, that's not true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've come across people like that who are atheists, agnostics, or maybe even spiritual, but they just feel like they have a short amount of time here. And they feel really driven to do a lot. And, there's moments, I think we can do that, but we can't ask it from ourselves until we burn out, just realize like burnout is inevitable if you keep that pace. And so it's better to integrate at least 2 to 10 minutes of meditation a day, even if it's not your thing, it's just vital to incorporate meditation, exercise, things that orient you differently, from that work mindset, that overdrive. And there's a lot of disappointment that can come from it, because we all know that achieving, the great big goal looks different when you get to the other side of it. It's not quite as
that too.
It's not quite as glistening. There's a lot to it usually. And so remembering the journey, I think, is part of changing that mindset.
Yeah, I would take it further and say immerse yourself in the journey and make sure you're enjoying the journey to whatever if you're going to write a book or publish make a movie or whatever, make sure you enjoy the actual process. Right. Or if you have you're going to wins 3 new clients this month or whatever, enjoy the outreach and talking to people and what have you.
And
why suffer?
We forget that some of the most successful people, who have done amazing things have had such astronomical failures, just absolute letdowns and, horrific moments of failure on that journey to that. So, part of it, I think, is also just going, what? I'm never losing my vision of what I'm bringing here. We each came in as these huge lights, and our families, our societies started beginning to change that. And that's, the near-death experience kind of exposed some of that for me and reminded me of the light that I am and the light that I was before family, before society, and we're all that, we are these great big lights. And it doesn't matter if one idea fails or doesn't reach the potential you thought it would, because we're just dealing in this realm where we're trying to bring as much light possible to each story, each business idea, each possibility. And so I think congratulate yourselves. I mean, that's what I would tell your listeners is congratulate yourselves for all the work that you have done, the journey that you are on, and then just keep adding light and joy to each moment of it.
Well, and the interesting thing is when we have a quote bad business experience, often in hindsight, we look back and say, oh, I'm so glad I had that experience. It let me shift my business differently, or now I behave differently, or I can see the silver lining in that cloud. And I just encourage everyone, to move that instead of waiting 5 years before you're like, oh yeah, having that divorce from the terrible spouse was a great thing. Maybe you can see the gratitude now in the moment.
Oh,
and maybe you express it to the other person, maybe you don't, depending on where they are in the 3D world. But you certainly can feel that gratitude to someone.
Yeah. And I have to say, on my journey, I've never felt like any teaching experience has been negative because I've always been guided by the other side. But in doing things outside of that, sometimes, like writing the book, for instance, it wasn't everything that I hoped it would be. I'm an English major. I hoped that the book would be received differently. I hoped that, my compensation would be better, but my publisher kind of squashed me and took a lot of that money. And, there were disappointments along the way. But what I found is I love talking to other writers and helping them evolve their book and learn from some of my mistakes. And so, Creator and Angels and people keep saying, hey, you really are meant to do more writing coaching, like especially people who want to get their spiritual stories out there. And it's so much fun to be around people who are in those beginning stages, who have a great idea, who have that joy for writing. And so, that's how that shifted into perhaps a better business model than actually writing a book. And a lot of times, people hear it all the time. They're like, there's very few New York Times bestsellers. And even if they are, it might be a day and that's not as much money as you think. It's not going to, set you for life. Like most business models that have a book, the book is kind of like a business card. And it's really the speaking events or the coaching or the one-on-one or the other things that you do. But people can certainly get their mind set on one thing, like a book is all that I want. I'm going to be a bestseller, and that can be a disappointment instead of shifting and saying, look, it introduced you to the world. Now you have, an opportunity to speak to people differently, to, engage in the world differently. So I think sometimes what's right in front of us, we want so badly, and we're missing out on the gifts in other areas.
I love that way of looking at things. And of course, that applies to everything in our businesses, whether it's making videos or launching a new product or hiring someone else to join the business. They're all opportunities for growth for ourselves and the business.
And even setbacks can be like major changes, for people. I've heard all these stories of a setback being the way that someone launched something new.
That sounds like a title of a new book. The setback is the way.
I like it.
Yes. The guy who does the DealBook cartoons, I'm spacing on his name, but he wrote a book about how his success in business was due to all his failures. I'll dig up the name and put it in the show notes. I did read it, but I find as I go through these shifts and shift more to a space of love, I kind of start forgetting a lot of the stuff in my ego mind. But fortunately, we have.
I get it.
Yeah. Scott Adams is his name, and the book will come to me. Now, I'm kind of curious. I've asked many guests this. You obviously get spiritual messages from your intuition, from angels, from ancestors, from God. How do you, quotes, hear these messages? Because not everyone hears things in their head. What's the process for you?
Right. So after my near-death experience, I only had my grandfather on the other side. And in the book, I wrote about how...
Did you see him?
Yeah, I saw him on the other side. He was young and handsome looking and very that place was a reminder of all that decays and dies here is made whole in heaven. And so he looks beautiful. His, skin was glowing. And I would still hear him from the other side after my near-death experience. And he helped me out of a couple of jams, and I would hear his voice come through in my head. And he would say, drive here, do this. I need you to call your dad. I need you to do. So he would give me literal instructions that would end up working out for my benefit. And so sometimes it comes in the sound of a voice that on the other side. Other people have heard, their intuition. I was interviewed by someone who came up with the film, a film about fear and intuition, and his name will come to me in a moment as well. But the whole point was he heard stop at this intersection, and there was no cars around, and then a semi blew through a red light, and he would have died had he not stopped. And he was late, for the airport and all this. But it was just this moment where he interviewed people around the world about intuition. Wow. And actually that journey is initiated from a lot of people who hear something. They don't know why they saved their kid's life in this moment, their own life, but it just happened. So I think our ancestors are around in moments of danger. Our angels are around, but in just daily life. So how do you know? Some people are more visual, and so you can play around with this. You can trade readings with people who want to develop their intuition. I always say it's great. Spiritual groups are wonderful, whatever group you join, because maybe you'll find a pal and trade readings and see what comes through, and just always ask for the highest good, to come through to help someone. And then a lot of times people are amazed. I've been a part of a lot of groups like this, and some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people are sent pictures. When I am giving medium readings, a lot of times I'll see an actual picture of something from the past of that person. And so that family member will understand what the picture is, because they'll go get it. Maybe it's somewhere in the room, and they're like, oh, you mean this one? And so there's that, like an image, a word, things are kind of implanted in your brain. A lot of times it helps to just tune into the energy or the feeling of something, that a lot of times we can just feel into it energetically. And that's another way of listening to it. But I would say one way to trust it is to work with someone, is to have a partner and let them verify, what you're picking up on, and a friend that you trust if you want to open it up a little bit more. And then, of course, there are people like Suzanne Giesman, well-known mediums who teach courses in this. I would also say, turn off your phone at bedtime and spend a few moments making an intention to have a lucid dream or to connect with a loved one in that space, because sometimes in your waking mind, you're not able to, but a lot of people have felt a mom or a dad or someone or grandparent or friends when they're very close to come through in a dream. And it's usually just simple, like a hug or, this kind of brief image that I'm fine, I love you, all is well here. And you wake up feeling better. Those are definitely contacts from the other side. That is not your imagination. That is a direct contact. And I know this because as my father was dying, his parents came to me in a dream, and I was trying to stay up at hospice and be awake for him at every moment. But I went home, went to sleep, and I had a dream, and both my grandparents showed up, and they're like, it's okay. We're with him. We're helping him transition. And as soon as I woke up, I knew he was gone. And I had this 7 calls from hospice, and I was like, oh, yes. So I know that these moments are true and real.
Yeah, it's a beautiful chapter in your book where you talk about your father's dying process over several months. And that story as well. And he was a very joyful guy. He knew he was going to die, and he was just so joyful. He wanted to spread joy for you and other people and himself.
Yeah, he died well. That It's interesting, like a lot of people have seen people die with fear, and that makes them fear death. And I felt very lucky to see someone die joyfully, and to die without that fear of death and that kind of certainty, joy for life and joy for the transition. And it is, nature is kinder than we think with that transition. And that's what I can say around pain and around everything that I went through. Yes, the pain was enormous and overwhelming at times, but luckily you don't process it all. You're not aware of all of it. And that's part of the release.
So how you're now in a space of trusting what you hear and your intuitive messages. How long did it take you to get to that place of trusting what you're hearing was really your guides or intuition?
Here's what I will say to people. I'm not 100%. Sometimes I can go wrong. I'm a very intuitive person. Like say, here's a mistake. I'll be just real with you. I made my partner, I tuned in. I was like, I really need to talk to him. And I rarely call, we tend to text, and I couldn't reach him. And I was like, there's someone in the car with him. Is this a woman? Is this someone, is he cheating on me? But I knew that there was someone in the car with him. And that was like spot on 100% intuition. I was like, well, maybe it's a friend and they're talking and he doesn't, want to pick up the phone and sound like, oh, here's this woman hassling me, like back home about what's for dinner. But he had picked up a couple of Uber rides, and he had just started doing that because his business was slumping a little, and he felt a little prideful to not tell me what he was doing, but he definitely couldn't answer, because he was driving Uber. And I think our fears can fill in the details. Like, you can be right about something, you can be right. Like, okay, someone isn't answering because they're with someone else, but maybe your past trauma of being lied to slips in, or maybe, you start filling in the details, which is just fear-based and imagination. So tuning in, a lot of times psychics and intuitives are really bad at their own life because their own trauma gets messed up. It's a lot easier to look at someone else's experience and see for them because you're divorced from your own trauma in that moment. You're just seeing the energy that's moving for other people. So I would caution people.
It's not personal when you're reading for someone else or intuitive reading, or it's not personal. It's not your trauma, and you don't have $1 million deal that may or may not come through, so you're not emotionally attached.
Right.
So it's easier to get clear. And then coming back to my view is our physical and emotional bodies are sort of covering up our light in different places. Some places our light comes through clearly, and maybe in our family area we're very clear with the light, but maybe with hiring people we have some past hiring traumas, and it's harder for us to see the truth. So that can affect that for me as well.
Yeah, that's why it's great to have intuitive friends or to get help in those matters where your own experiences may be interfering with your intuition. But I would say that it will come through intuition, and trust it, in times of trauma, in times of helping others who are in traumatic situations. There's a lot of support. Energetically in those moments. So anytime a friend is in the hospital, visit them, know that you are bringing your team to help them as much as they have a team around them.
I think to come back to that analogy of like my light shines through, but it's blocked by my traumas and fears and what have you. There are two ways I can see to deal with that. One is to clear out as many past traumas as I can identify, or even the ones I can't identify, but I can sense, and get help from healers like yourself or other people to do that, and do that proactively to clean up stuff before it creates an issue. And then the other thing that I found helps me, the more light I can run through me. Like when I go in nature and I journal about my business, I get so much clearer messages because I'm more filled with love and light. So it can shine through even if I do have little bits of trauma lurking around. So those are two ways I can suggest.
I love that. That when you clear out as much as you can, and I'm often working on myself, in yoga and other places where I'm just letting go of things from the past, you can use exercise as a way to, really just say, hey, creator, I give you this pattern. It is no longer useful to me. Give me a pattern of abundance. Give me a pattern of, healthy, happy relationships. I whatever it is that you're working on, just give this to a higher power, perhaps in nature, perhaps exercising, perhaps doing, anything that is repetitive, even cleaning. Like some people who hate cleaning, that's a good opportunity. As I sweep these floors, I'm sweeping out the immaturity in my life.
I love that imagery. I will say that cleaning a house or whatever is a way to clear the energy in the house, and cleaning up, file folders in a computer drive for your business is another way to clean stuff. So that is a way. And I've certainly made, one of the techniques I've done is I've made a list of all the ex and current employees I've had, all the old current or ex clients, vendors, and then just felt the energy of each one. And where's sticky energy in this list that I need to do some cleaning on trauma I had with this ex-employee or ex-client. So that's an example of how to proactively go about things. So let me turn to, you do remote energy healings, Tricia. In fact, I've experienced one. It was very powerful with you. How do you think that works? Because like you were in Texas, I'm in Peru. How could you possibly do healing? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yes.
I personally understand why, but
I know, it took me a long time. So accident happened in 94. It took me until 2016 to be a medium, and people pulled me out and forced me to give medium readings, and I gave them away for free at first. And then I was like, okay, there's enough people wanting this connection to the other side. And it's very healing for them when they've lost someone, especially a kid. Or teenager to suicide and other, traumatic moments. It took me a long time to embrace a healing modality as well. I knew that the angels assisted me. And so I always told people, ask your angels to assist you with physical healing, set an intention and meditation that they will be working on you. And it took me really the last few years to find theta healing. And to me, this just makes so much sense, theta healing. And theta healing is a form of energy work, but it's also kind of consciously working on different parts of ourselves. Why it made sense to me is you're there in Peru, I'm here in Texas, but you have a collection of things that you hold, just at an ancestral level from all of your ancestors. I do too. Why can't the light just work on this and clear out this pattern? And we send, just so much love to all that these ancestors survived to bring us to this moment in time. But some of their programs are just not needed anymore. Like the world is different, thank you for surviving. Thank you for bringing us here. But how about you on the other side, experience some of the bliss that we're experiencing now on a soul level? And of course they embrace it, in that afterlife, and embrace it for you and embrace it for me. And then on a soul level, when it comes to past lives, most of the time, people clear this up, in the in-between moments. But sometimes some trauma is just so deep. There are people who lost, I know one man, and I interviewed him, Kevin Wooding, who does past life regressions, and he saw his mother burn at a stake as a witch in a past life. And she turned away from him, hoping that he would go into that society and not, think the way she did. But he felt this abandonment from a parent. And that was a theme, throughout his life. And he talks about it in the interview. So I'm not just telling his story, but sometimes soul healing is required. Like we hold on to some piece from a life that was particularly traumatic. And so theta healing works on that level, but it also works on society's levels of all the programming that we have. So it's really a deprogramming with energy healing. We can't necessarily get to the bottom of deep, like I've had deep work with my theta healer, around abuse in childhood, because it comes up a lot. And, just like in therapy or anything, I'd like for some things to be instantly healing, but maybe we're just peeling away at some issues for some time until there's a bigger shift. But how it works, I think, is, when two people are gathered together and tune into the light, that just kind of amplifies all of your ancestors, all of your guides, all of mine, and together we just become more powerful. So spiritual communities that work together with that intention, people that work together with that intention can shift in great ways.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, what it comes down to at a spiritual level, we are all one. We're all connected at a spiritual level. We're just physically separate bodies and separate locations. And then also my personal belief is, I don't know how to say this in English, but like there's only one time. There is no past, present, and future. It's all one big circle, and it's all accessible at once. And so with healing, we're stepping into that. And just to give an example of group, I think group healing is very important. And if you have a business and you have staff or maybe customers, being in a group and doing group prayer or setting group intention or meditating together can be very powerful for achieving goals in your business, and aligning people. And the example I was going to give for that was from that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And there was a meditation group in Washington, D.C., and they meditated on reducing the crime rate and increasing peace in the city. And the actual chief of police signed on to this study saying, look, the stats went down by so much when they should have got up because the temperature was going up, and that usually causes a crime wave. But they went down during this meditation period. And as the number of people meditating increased, the shift became bigger. So it was very interesting evidence that, intent and meditation and prayer can shift things.
No, and to people who say, it's better to get out there and do the work. I think there are times when we can actively get out there and, counsel people and be activists, but you shouldn't poo-poo energy work, because it transcendental meditation, for one. I was a part of TM for many years after the near-death experience, and that's been proven, when groups of people get together, just like in What the Bleep Do We Know, and send energy to locations, that great healing occurs. I did this, I think it was last summer, the summer before. There was a friend of mine who lived in a kind of a rough part of LA. He's a near-death experiencer, Chris Batts, and a young man was lynched in the park where he meditates. So the very tree that he sits next to and meditates, a young Black man was hung, and he's a young Black man.
Oh, wow.
And so I was so kind of shocked and horrified. I was thinking of my own meditation tree, and I was like, how in the world, could I go meditate at that tree? I asked my spiritual community for all of us to pray for that park, that area. Chris went there on that day. A couple of documentary makers hooked up with him that day, featured his story, called me, spread light about, what we were doing there. And that, I was like, in some ways, that's verification that these documentary makers showed up on that very day to bring more healing to this area, and to bring more healing, to him and to this park. And so don't discredit sending light as a group or getting together. I think I'd love to see more people get together. There's a lot of issues that can make people angry, but what if we got together and meditated together publicly, and around an issue instead of protesting? I would love to see that organized, because it's hard to hate someone in the lotus position who might make fun of them, but you don't hate them in a sense.
Yeah, I think hating and aggressive protesting versus peaceful protest or meditation or sit-in type of thing, it makes a difference energetically. And that whole aggressive protest stuff is so last century, or whatever the right phrase is, and it's not the way to shift things. Great to if you feel anger, great to take action and have passion, and then take it to the next level and take it to something like you're saying is a better way to shift things and sets a better example. And it's very hard to if you think of it as a them and us thing, I don't think there is a them and us, but even if you do believe, oh, well, I believe in this thing and other people are against me, when you do violent or angry protests or write angry stuff on social media, it's so much easier for people to dismiss you or to come back angry and attack you. But when you come from a place of love and peace, it's very difficult. It's like a jiu-jitsu kind of move, and they can't really attack because there's nothing for them to hang on to.
Right. And nonviolent communication I love Marshall Rosenberg, and he has helped warring nations in other places find solutions. So how in the world can we not find solutions in the United States and other places if people who have found solutions have been, that committed to violence and to anger? And often it's just about listening and going, okay, this person needs this, and this is their request, and this is what they want. And then being willing to hear what someone else needs and wants, and with empathy for self and others. And that's I think the crucial piece is sometimes we don't give empathy to ourselves, but sometimes we don't give empathy to others and their journey. And I've always believed in the power of stories, and maybe that's why I teach English. I just think that walking a mile in someone else's shoes, listening to someone else's story, certainly widens our capacity for empathy.
Yes. I know we're running short on time. So do you want to wrap up now, or should we talk about a few more things? Where are you?
Yeah, I have about 5 minutes before I have to get going. So So do energy healings work for everyone? That's a great question. I can speak more to medium readings first. And what I can say is that they work better when the participant is also asking their ancestor to show up. When the participant says, hey, mom, dad, I'd love to hear from you. I want to feel this energy. And then it's a co-creation. So I think energy healings can work better when you are receptive and not critical, just kind of like, hey, let's see what can happen here. So let's be receptive to that energy. And, does it work on just one layer of healing sometimes? And there's much deeper things to get through, certainly. Can it be like miraculous at times and really make big shifts? Certainly. I don't know why, but I always let's hold out the possibility for the miraculous at all times. Let's hold out that possibility of a big possible shift. Now, if someone is not open, can you pray for someone, or say, a friend or a loved one is going through something difficult and they don't believe? The energy of love is never wrong to send. So it's never wrong to send unconditional love. Can you work out a pattern for someone if they're not receptive? Probably not. I mean, that's up to creator and that person. Can you ask an angel, to intervene and really help? And here's 2 examples. So one time when I first got a Kindle, a book was just downloaded out of nowhere, and stone cold sober, I didn't do this. No one did this to my Kindle. My Kindle was sitting there out of nowhere. A book was downloaded, and I was meant to read this book.
Wow.
I really felt like there was an intervention in my life, at that point, and I think that there's these magical moments and interventions can happen for people, but will they be open and ready to accept it? So you can pray for a coincidence for someone. You can pray for an opening of their heart. You can ask your angels to talk to their angels and give them a synchronicity that will help them get, get the message, but will they be receptive? At the end of the day, it's kind of up to that person. And I am estranged actually from my mother. And I have prayed many times about this. And I have heard from angels and her angels, they said, look, we are trying. Like, we are doing our best, but this is your mother, like kind of reminding me that, maybe, but maybe not, so, maybe we have to wait for the right time or when that person is receptive.
Well, and I'd give an analogy, you could ask, does physical massage always work to relieve body pain and tension? It certainly helps when the patient receiving the massage is prepared to believe that massage could help them and is prepared to relax instead of punching out at the massage therapist every time they touch something painful, So same with remote healing, it goes so much easier when the person is receptive, but it still can work, I believe. It just requires more light and love to be flowed through for it. And then, yes, it may not be the right divine time. It also may be that for this person to heal, that particular issue may be so energy traumatic, it would be life-threatening to them. And they have to do it in little pieces or layers. So, I mean, that's another thing.
Yeah. And, on that note, too, around healing, it comes not only at the right time, but through the right person. So certainly say to every practitioner, ask that their angels work through them, because you don't have to think that they're the coolest person in the world. Like, maybe they just really have great angels working through them, maybe. So you have to try a lot of different people and find the one that works for you. So I always tell people, don't give up on healing, keep searching, because I have had miraculous shifts in physical healing from unlikely situations. And so have other people. I mean, we could all sit around and talk about, our miraculous healings if we've been on that healing journey. So to anyone who's just starting it, don't give up. Don't say, oh, all Reiki healers are the same. All massage therapists are the same. All things. No, like, we're all different. We're all resonating differently. We're all using different techniques.
Is there a message you'd like to leave people with that's the most important thing you've learned from your near-death experience?
Yeah, there's so much. And if you want to hear the full story of the near-death experience, it's the first video I made on my channel. And I was afraid to put my voice out there into the world, to be honest, to be public in that way. And so I encourage you to speak your truth, to know that it's an amazing journey, whether you're birthing a business into this world, whether you're expanding something, to really just believe in yourself and your own power to affect change, but also know that you are guided by something much greater than you, that light is working through you, that you can be assisted on that other side, and that it can be an absolutely beautiful journey for you.
That's a very inspiring message. If people want to find you online, what are the best ways to do that, Tricia?
My website is Tricia, Tricia Barker, BARKERNDE.com. And I have a contact page there. Really, if you just Google me or if you just type my name in YouTube, you'll find my story out there. If you like Shaman Oaks, he did a really short version of just the story and animated it. And so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, the first time I told the story publicly on YouTube, I was not, a professional YouTuber. I even held the camera the wrong way, and I cried because, just talking about God was so overwhelming. So it's an authentic, telling of that story to people. But I think these near-death experiences, for anyone who's afraid of dying, it is worth checking out, the different near-death experiences. They do bring peace to people.
Fabulous. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for the light that you spread and the work that you do. It's been a pleasure.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Create a fabulous and profitable day. What would it take?